On April 27, 2021, The Hollywood Reporter stated that Legendary was quietly taking steps to stretch the series into one or more installments, while negotiating with Wingard to potentially return to direct. Various ideas were considered, with Son of Kong being one potential title. In August 2021, Monsterverse writer Max Borenstein stated that there will be some new interesting installments coming due to the success of Godzilla vs. Kong. And this would all begin with Adam Wingard's 2024 film, Godzilla X Kong, The New Empire.
Let them fight.
You're a wizard, Harry.
You're gonna need a bigger boat. I'll be back.
Death has come to your little town, Jim.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Chills and Thrills. My name is Connor Dunham and I am here with Chris, and today we are wrapping up what is so far our final film of the Godzilla franchise. It has been a long time coming. I believe this is our 36th episode, as we did the anime trilogy all into one. So this should be fun. Chris, how did you feel about the new Empire on your first couple watches? I know I'll let you go first.
Yeah, I like it a lot. It's it does the thing some of the older Godzilla movies did in more ways than one. There's a lot of sections that are focused entirely on the monsters with little to no spoken dialogue, which you see in movies like Son of Godzilla and things like that, which is really cool to see, to kind of put the monsters front and center. And then it gets a little wild with the plot, kind of like a 70s movie, you know. I was sometimes a little kind of critical of a movie like Final Wars for going back to the 70s in a way that felt a little kind of goofy, or at least not appropriate for the Godzilla send-off 50th anniversary movie. You know, I've since come to kind of really dig Final Wars. But this is a movie that in another way, it's kind of pulling elements of Godzilla versus Megalon and things like that into it, but kind of executed in a way that still kind of really works for me. So I dig it. I dig it.
I do as well. I seen this in theaters twice. I went the second time with my sister, her husband, and my nieces, and they had fun. They really wanted to see it, and I was like, "Well, let's go." Like you know, I love watching Godzilla. Like, let's go see it. But I like the characters. I love how the monsters are front and center for minutes on end without humans interrupting. And I like Kong and Godzilla in this. I like Scar King. I like Shimu. I like them all. This is a good film, and I have fun with it. I think the director did a good job with this. Is it better than Godzilla vs Kong? I guess we'll find out when we add it to our ranking list. But I mean, it's definitely a fun, like, cheesy callback to the late '60s and like early '70s films.
Yeah, a lot of cool visuals, a lot of great action, very fast paced. You know, there's a lot to like.
Absolutely, this one is fun. I'll go into some quick background on the film for you before we dive some more. Godzilla X Kong: The New Empire is a 2024 American science fiction monster film directed by Adam Wingard and written by Terry Rossio, Simon Barrett, and Jeremy Slater, from a story by Rossio and Wingard and Barrett, with visual effects by Alessandro Ongaro. Produced by Legendary Pictures, which also co-financed it with Warner Bros., it is the fifth Hollywood-produced Godzilla film and 38th Godzilla film overall, as well as the fifth film in the Monsterverse. It is a direct sequel to the 2021 film Godzilla vs. Kong and stars Rebecca Hall, Brian Tyree Henry, and Kaylee Hoddle, who reprises their roles from that film, as well as Dan Stevens, Alex Ferns, Ballad Chen, and Rachel House, who play original characters. The film made its world premiere at the TCL Chinese Theater in Los Angeles, California on March 25th, 2024. Warner Bros. Released it to wider American theaters on March 29th and Japanese theaters on April 26th. And this film got very good reviews when it was released. I heard a lot of people talking about it. Even I would be at volleyball one night and I heard people talking about it, and I was like, what? Like, you guys are talking about a Godzilla film at a bar and playing volleyball? I was so confused, but it was so good to hear that this film did so good. And, you know, like, we'll get into the budget and whatnot, but this film did awesome, which encouraged them to do another sequel that is supposedly coming out in late 2026, early 2027. So I'm always excited about that.
Yeah, I believe there's a March 2027 date that has been reserved for legendary event movie. And so I'm pretty sure that's going to end up being the sequel to this. And yeah, this ended up being the most successful entry in the Monsterverse, just barely outgrossing Kong Skull Island. I don't even know if the numbers got officially updated on Box Office Mojo, but I remember them making the post that this had hit 570 million worldwide, which is pretty good. It's a good 1-2 punch that Godzilla -1 came out and was a Toho Japanese film and was very, very serious and very very well received in terms of the critical reception of being a very serious movie, and it won the Oscar for Best Visual Effects. And then just a few months later, you get this movie go on the other end of the spectrum and do this, you know, big, bombastic, fun, wild adventure movie, and it found a lot of success as well. So it was very nice to see that.
Absolutely. It's always nice to see Godzilla winning at the box office, whether it be a Japanese film and an American Hollywood film or anything. And like you said, they are two completely different ends of the spectrum. You know, -1 was a like character driven, like heartthrob, like very serious film, and then you got this one that it's kind of cheesy, schlocky, and pretty much just strictly fun for the fans.
Yeah, and I mean, Godzilla remains the most versatile character in cinema.
Absolutely. Why don't we go ahead and get into a trailer on the film? We'll get into a plot synopsis, come back with some fun facts, some numbers, and dive into all our favorite categories with character and score and scene and all that.
Sounds good.
For centuries, there was harmony. The Titans were the guardians of nature, and the great apes became the protectors of humanity. We've discovered a signal. She can feel it. Kong, Godzilla, they can feel it too. Something is coming. Something even they're afraid of. You feel like going for a ride?
Thought you'd never ask.
Just try not to swallow your tongue.
What?
Oh my God!
Is that a mini Kong?
Oh my God.
That's not just a signal. That's a call for war. What is that?
Kong can't stop this on his own.
He won't be alone.
The last time those two met up, it was almost the end of Kong.
They don't have to like each other. They just have to work together.
Now I have seen everything.
We've made some minor augmentations.
Oh.
3 years after defeating Mechagodzilla, Kong has established his new territory in the Hollow Earth and searches for more of his kind. On Earth's surface, Godzilla continues to maintain order between humanity and giant monsters known as Titans, killing Titaness Scylla in Rome and resting in the Colosseum afterwards. A Monarch observation outpost stationed in Hollow Earth picks up an unidentified signal. On the surface, the signal causes Gia, the last known survivor of the Iwi tribe from Skull Island, to experience hallucinations and visions, causing her adoptive mother and Kong expert Dr. Eileen Andrews to worry. Also sensing the signal, Godzilla leaves Rome and attacks a nuclear plant in France to absorb radiation. He then heads to the lair of the Titan Tiamat in the Arctic. Monarch believes Godzilla is strengthening himself for an oncoming threat. When a sinkhole opens near his home, Kong discovers an uncharted realm where a tribe of his species has survived, including a juvenile named Suko. After a brief initial confrontation, Kong convinces Suko to lead him to the tribe's lair, and the two slowly bond on their journey. Andrews and Gia, alongside Titan veterinarian, trapper, and conspiracy podcaster Bernie Hayes, travel to Hollow Earth to locate the source of the signal. They find the Monarch outpost destroyed. As the group follows the signal, they discover a temple that leads them to a subterranean section that houses a surviving Iwi tribe, who communicate telepathically with each other, living beneath portals to the surface. Inspecting the temple, they surmise that the signal was a telepathic distress call sent by the Iwi. While observing Gia socializing with the Iwi, Andrews voices her fears to Trapper that Gia may choose to stay with her people and that Andrews would have to accept it. Inside a temple, Andrews uncovers hieroglyphics displaying the past and future. Scar King once attempted to conquer the surface world, forced Shimu to trigger an ice age and waged war against Godzilla's species, but Godzilla defeated him by trapping him and his tribe deep within Hollow Earth. The prophecy also indicates that Gia would be the key to reawakening Mothra. Kong encounters the Ape tribe. The tribe's tyrannical leader, Scar King, battles Kong with the aid of the ancient ice-powered titan Shimu, who he controls using a crystal that can cause her pain. Shimu's ice breath injures Kong's right arm, causing frostbite. With Suko's help, Kong manages to escape after losing his axe. Sensing Gia, Kong locates the temple and is fitted by Trapper with a prototype exoskeletal glove to strengthen and heal his frostbitten limb. Unknown to them, another ape follows them, then informs the Scar King that the protective barrier leading to the surface portals has been opened. Gia successfully awakens the reborn Mothra. Meanwhile, Godzilla kills Tiamat and absorbs cosmic radiation from her lair, which turns his dorsal plates magenta. Hoping to lure Godzilla to Hollow Earth to assist him, Kong surfaces in Cairo and calls out to Godzilla. Despite Kong's attempts to communicate, an enraged Godzilla attacks him, and a brief fight ensues until Mothra intervenes. Godzilla, Kong, and Mothra return to the Hollow Earth and engage Scar King and Shimu in a battle, in which Kong loses his axe. Scar King and Shimu manage to use one of the portals to escape to the surface, forcing Godzilla and Kong to chase them to Rio de Janeiro, where Shimu induces a second ice age at Scar King's command. The factions are evenly matched until Suko arrives with Kong's axe and destroys the crystal controlling Shimu. Shimu changes sides, freezing Scar King before Kong shatters him to pieces. After undoing Shimu's ice age with his atomic breath, Godzilla returns to rest in the Colosseum. Gia decides to stay with Andrews, Mothra restores the protective barrier of the Iwi's home and the portals, Kong returns with Shimo and Suko to the Hollow Earth, where he becomes the apes' new tribe leader. All right, Chris, how about I hit you with some numbers here quick? I got quite a few fun facts, so we'll do the numbers first.
Sounds good.
So Godzilla X Kong, or Godzilla and Kong, The New Empire, had a budget of $135 million with a final box office, from what I found, of $568.7 million. So that I mean, even if, like you've said before in past episodes, if theaters only keep about 50-55% of the returns.
Yeah, on the high end, the theater is like 50. It's more like 45 to 50 with the majority share going to the back to the studios.
That's what I meant to say. If the studio keeps about 50% of the returns, if they split it, I mean, they still made quite a decent amount of money back on this film.
Yeah, and I mean, when you look at the progression of the Monsterverse, the low point at the box office was King of the Monsters, and then Godzilla vs. Kong made quite a significant more than King of the Monsters, and then Godzilla Kong the New Empire made even more than Godzilla vs. Kong. So after kind of hitting a bit of a low spot with King of the Monsters, the numbers have gone up with each movie since. And this is actually one of the, I think it's the lowest budget of the entire Monsterverse as well. So the profit margin is definitely the biggest of all of the films.
It's sad to say still that our beloved King of the Monsters is ranked the worst of the Monsterverse.
Well, but you know what? The legacy and reputation of that movie improves every year, so it's okay. Like I said, in a long running franchise, the 6 months when the movie comes out is not the ultimate fate of the movie. People love that movie. It's part of this series. It's in the box set, so it got its due over time.
Absolutely. This film's rated a 6.1 out of 10 on IMDb, a 47% on Metacritic, 54% on Rotten Tomatoes based on over 250 views, with an audience score of 92% based on over 3,000 reviews.
Holy hell.
Yeah, that's a large marginal gap.
The fans know what they want. The critics, man, I'm sorry. It's more of, like I said, my running joke with the critics is that once in a blue moon they get it right. Generally speaking, they got their heads up their butts.
Yep, and then along with our 92% score from fans on Rotten Tomatoes, 92% of Google users like this film.
Yeah, they know what's up.
And then this is something that is, I mean, you don't feel it during the film because there's so many other monsters, but Godzilla's only on screen for just about 8 minutes, or about 7% of the film, with his first appearance at about 6.5 minutes, or around 6% into the film. So with Kong and Scar King and Shimu and all the, Scylla at the beginning, you get quite a bit of monster action in this movie. So you don't miss Godzilla as much, it wouldn't seem.
Yeah, and it's definitely, and it's not a wrong thing or an insult to say that this is more of a Kong movie with Godzilla sprinkled in. And, Godzilla fans are naturally, going to feel a certain way about that. But the one thing they do well is that Godzilla is not reserved for, having all of his 8 minutes in the last 30 minutes of the movie or 40 minutes of the movie. They do make a point to pretty consistently cut back to Godzilla doing things. And one thing I like about this movie in particular is that we get to see Godzilla take on some other Titans and do so in devastating fashion to kind of really hammer home, like, yes, he's the alpha, So we get to see Godzilla clock in some W's in this movie as well, which is always great. He gets to unleash some violence. He gets to have a lot of great scenes. He whips out the atomic pulse. He gets the power up and the transformation. So they do make the most out of his screen time, even though he's sort of the B plot in this movie. I still really like the way they utilize him.
Absolutely. I mean, I love I mean, if you're going back to something Godzilla's doing every like 15 minutes or so, I can live with that while still having Kong on screen, and we get Mothra back in this film, which I absolutely love. I love.
That was such a pleasant surprise. So happy to see that.
Yes, absolutely, and I love her utilization in the film as well. So I mean, for what, an hour and 53-minute movie, again, you probably have 40 minutes or so of monster screen time, and it's phenomenal.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, here's a perspective is that Godzilla 2014 is longer than this movie by, I think, 10 minutes or so. But there are long stretches of that movie where me personally, I'm kind of just dying to see Godzilla on screen in any capacity. It is quite a long waiting game to finally see him, and then when you see him, it feels like you're just never quite getting enough. For the whole movie, it feels like that. Maybe in the last 10-15 minutes, you get to feel like you're finally getting it. But this movie, he may have statistically less screen time. Even on a percentage basis, he may have less, but it never feels like I'm missing or deprived of Godzilla in this movie in any kind of big way. So so there you go.
Yeah, and I think that's the only film in the Monsterverse that I feel that way, because even with Kong and Kong Skull Island, it was like I didn't miss Kong. I feel like we got a lot of Kong and like a lot of other like little monsters like dabbled in there, and then you got the Skull Crawler and stuff. Like I never missed Kong in Kong Skull Island.
there's Kong movies never have an issue getting a lot of someone said once, or kind of fairly recently on one of the social medias, they said that Kong movies are always somehow kind of about Kong, but the Godzilla movies are rarely specifically about Godzilla, and they're just different kind of monsters. Kong is basically an upscaled primitive human, so you get to read into Kong a little bit better. He's got facial expressions that are relatable, and he kind of moves and performs and behaves and reacts in a way that's a lot more human like. And Godzilla is sort of on this pedestal of being this kind of monster that is not any kind of extension or relation to humanity. So they have to be executed in different ways, and so that lends itself to being able to show scenes. You're not going to really do a scene in a modern movie of Godzilla kind of like slowly gaining a new tiny monster ally and kind of like having, pointing to him and pointing at things and trying to figure out where he's taking him and all this stuff. Like, you don't really do scenes like that with Godzilla. You don't really get that. He doesn't really interact and have personality in that way,
It's nice that in the Monsterverse we do get a couple like smiles and whatnot out of Godzilla, that from like the evil grin that he does and stuff. But I mean, at least we get some kind of facial features, and I mean, we have seen him interact with the humans,
Yeah.
like get up close and stuff like that. So like he's not this like terrible monster. Like he understands that. Like I feel like he understands the coexistence part.
Yeah, he's sort of a bit more kind of ethereal, kind of like elevated a little bit. He's not gonna like reach out and hold a human in his hand in these movies or anything like that. He's kind of a little bit elevated, and Kong is very much on that personal level, like having a conversation with Gia. That's not really Godzilla's thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's either indifferent or pissed.
He shows up and he's ready to take care of business, or he's ready to go about and do his own thing.
Yeah, he's Doom guy.
All right, this should be fun. I have a lot of fun facts for you from this film, so I'll go ahead and get into that. The first one is just Adam Wingard is the first Monsterverse director to return for a second film, having previously helmed Godzilla vs. Kong in 2021. The time between the domestic releases of this film, released in the US on March 29, 2024, and Godzilla Minus One, released in Japan on November 3rd, 2023, is the shortest between two Godzilla movies in the franchise's history at only 147 days between releases.
Which is just awesome. I feel like, we're in some peak Godzilla times, the minute and then you have to consider that the 10 episodes of Monarch Legacy of Monsters, which feature Godzilla, were sprinkled from late last year into the beginning of this year as well. So there was even more Godzilla sort of on our screens, and it's great, this whole year is Godzilla's 70th anniversary, to sort of see a period where we were getting episodes of Monarch and -1 in theaters, and then -1 wins an Oscar, and then Godzilla Kong comes out. Then the whole media side of it, they dropped the Monsterverse box set, and then -1's going to be hitting the U.S. disc market here soon, and then the original 54 Godzilla is getting a 4K release from Criterion. So there's a lot of great things happening for Godzilla's 70th anniversary.
Yeah, and one thing about this film is it played at G-Fest this year, and this was the only one I didn't go back and see. I seen Final Wars that Friday, and I seen Godzilla Godzilla 1984 or The Return of Godzilla, Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla. I seen all of them, and I didn't go back that Saturday night to see this at G-Fest, and I wish I would have to enjoy it with the crowd.
Oh yeah, it would have been great. That's the crowd you want to see it with.
I was so upset. I seen reviews of it on YouTube, and people were saying that it was like the loudest the crowd at G-Fest has ever been. People who had been there before, and I'm just like, damn it.
Yeah, I think I saw it 3 times in theaters. I saw it opening night in an awesome top tier IMAX screen. I took my younger brother to one of those Screen X wraparound screens where it fills the front wall, but also they have screens on the 2 side walls of the auditorium as well with peripheral footage. And for a film like -1, it didn't have very much because I saw it in that format as well. But for this film, almost all of the material, anytime it was a fully CGI shot or a fully CGI environment, it had the extra material on the side screen. So all of the Hollow Earth stuff, all of the great Godzilla stuff, the big final battle, almost all of it was filling all 3 screens. And it was just an awesome experience to see in the sort of the wraparound screen.
I have never been to a theater that does that, and I would love to.
Yeah, it's specified as Screen X is the brand, and I wasn't sure how I'd feel about it, and some people feel a certain way because the extra light on the sort of side walls kind of it fills the room with a little bit more light, so the picture, the image gets maybe a little washed out, you could say. I mean, that's for people that are really into the technical stuff, but for me, generally, I think it looks great, and for movies that have a lot of CGI moments and environments, that's pretty easy for them to just expand the frame and to put some of that peripheral footage on the side screens. It's not completely in focus because it's meant to be seen in your peripheral vision. It's not meant for you to turn your head and look at the side screen the whole time. But it creates that sort of wraparound experience, and it's just really, really enveloping. And for a movie like this, with all of the Hollow Earth stuff and all of the big monster fights, it was very, very cool.
Maybe one day I'll get down to something like that. I'm not even sure if we have one close to me that does that. I'll have to do some research and find one, because there's some movies coming out that I'd like to see, and if they have that Screen X capability, that would be fun. That'd be a good time.
Yeah, when the next Avatar movie drops, I'm definitely going.
My goodness, I'm coming to pay you a visit. All right, I'll continue. This is the first Godzilla film produced solely by American studios in which Godzilla never visits the United States.
That is interesting to hear. You don't really pick up on that.
Nope, I never put that together, so I figured I'd add that in there for a little bit of fun as well.
And there you go, branching out. And Terry Rossio, one of the writers, he famously worked on the the unused 1990s script for Godzilla that was far superior to the one they ended up using, but it's nice to see that he finally got around in his career to doing another Godzilla movie.
Absolutely. This film is technically the first Godzilla movie to feature the letter X in either its English or its Japanese title.
Yeah, a lot of the like in Japan, X is often used as just kind of a sometimes almost like a hyphen or like a connector. Like a lot of the Japanese titles for these movies are displayed on posters and stuff as X. Like it'll be like Godzilla X Mothra X King Ghidorah Giant Monster All Out Attack. For them, they use it almost like a hyphen. You know, in the anime world, when you see something like Hunter X Hunter, that's just said phonetically as Hunter Hunter, or Spy X Family, that's just spoken as Spy Family. So the way to kind of speak this in the sort of Japanese sense, you would just say Godzilla Kong, the new empire. But it is a cool thing to have instead of just like a typical versus. You know, they could have gone with and, you know, just a simple ampersand, but I mean that's neither here nor there.
This film's initial rumored title, Son of Kong, is the title of the 1933 sequel to the original King Kong. It also filmed in 1933. So, yeah, I heard the rumored title of Son of Kong, and I was just like, all right. So, like, are we gonna have Godzilla in it? What is this gonna be a just solo follow up? How are we
Yeah,
doing this next film?
I remember for a hot minute there was a debate over whether or not Godzilla was going to be in this at all because they kept calling it the Godzilla vs. Kong follow up and kept referring to that Son of Kong working title. So I'm like, oh, are they going back to just a solo Kong movie? Like that wouldn't be very satisfying, but they know where the money's at. Clearly, it's a little bit up because they don't have to get any kind of approval or permission or deal extension from Toho to just do a Kong movie. That's kind of an original Monsterverse thing. But for Godzilla, they have to go through Toho. So I'm sure there was a point there, whether they say it or not, whether they admit it or not. I'm sure there was points where they weren't sure and they were developing the movie anyway. And you can tell when you watch the movie, it might have always been made as a Godzilla Kong movie, but you can tell it was made in a way that if the Godzilla side of it didn't pan out, that they could have easily remanufactured this into being just a Kong movie. You know, they could have just kept Godzilla's surface plot out and not had Godzilla come into the third act and just done it purely as a Kong Hollow Earth movie. They could have you can see how it could have happened that way. But I'm glad that things did work out and that we did get Godzilla in it and he got some great moments.
Absolutely, I am as well. This film holds the record for the most Titans to appear in a Monsterverse film outside of stock footage or text, with at least 9 on-screen appearances.
Yeah. I mean, you consider the whole, you know, army of Kongs or great apes and things of that nature, and all of the various Hollow Earth creatures. It definitely goes into that sort of, you know, phantasmagorical kind of, you know, Hollow Earth is the equivalent of Monster Island in this franchise, and I really love that it's being used in that way. So it's always nice to see. Everyone loves to see creatures and monsters and new characters like that, and so it's great. You know, pure eye candy.
This film marks the first time that an individual Titan other than Godzilla or Kong has appeared in a second Monsterverse film, not counting carcasses or stock footage. Mothra and Scylla return from Godzilla King of the Monsters, and Doug returns from Godzilla vs. Kong.
Yeah, I love it. It's nice continuity. You know, these are the stars of this franchise. So when, you know, even though this franchise is very sort of clearly and strongly, you know, it maintains a very strong continuity. It's good that you don't just see all of the various monsters introduced in King of the Monsters just dropped out of the lineup. You know, I think it's cool that this is, depending on the source of your lore, it's either implying that the sort of spirit of Mothra is sort of eternal and recurring, or this is meant to be sort of like the original Mothra or an ancestor of the one that died in King of the Monsters, but it's Mothra all the same, with the same kind of link or symbiotic dynamic with Godzilla. And then Scylla was nice because didn't have a huge role in King of the Monsters, gets to come in for a special cool cameo in the beginning of this movie, and Godzilla totally wrecks her, and it's awesome.
Absolutely. I love Mothra. I love that they brought back Scylla kind of being like, just a pain in Godzilla's neck. And then in theaters, there must have, I mean, clearly there was quite a few Godzilla fans in there and Kong fans the first time I went to see this one in theaters. But when Doug showed up on screen, or what fans have named Doug, the theater kind of did like gave a little eruption, like they were excited to see him back. So it was funny. It gave me a little laugh.
Yeah, everyone loves Doug, and I hope that I would love to see Doug in a bigger, better role in another MonsterVerse movie. Like it was cool that he got a little cameo, but like I'd love to see some more done with him.
Get his own like little side by side fight with Godzilla, fighting two other monsters.
Yeah, it always makes me think of The Hangover when he's singing on the piano. He's like, then we're gonna find our best friend Doug, and then we're gonna give him a best friend hug. It's like that's all I think of when I think about Doug. Everyone loves Doug.
Oh boy. This also makes Mothra the only Toho monster besides Godzilla to appear physically and alive in more than one MonsterVerse film. This is the first film in which King Kong and Mothra meet. Mothra was previously only depicted in cave paintings in Kong Skull Island and Godzilla vs. Kong.
Yep, and famously, the original script for Ebirah Horror of the Deep, aka Godzilla vs. the Sea Monster, was famously written as a King Kong movie first, and was then transformed into a Godzilla movie at the last hour. And that would have been an interaction between King Kong and Mothra, but we finally got it here.
Whoa, slow down, my good sir. No.
Did I jump the gun?
Very next fun fact is King Kong and Mothra almost crossed over once before in the unmade 1966 film Operation Robinson Crusoe, King Kong vs. Ebirah, which ultimately became the Godzilla film Ebirah Horror of the Deep.
There you go. I got my facts straight.
Chris knows his Godzilla. The pose Kong strikes while roaring with the Beast Glove resembles cover art for the 1994 fighting game Primal Rage.
Oh, nice. That's cool.
I never got to play it. Not sure if you did, but I did look it up.
It's basically Mortal Kombat with like dinosaurs and monsters and stuff. And I played it a bit as a kid. My older brother and cousin played it more while I watched. But I had a couple of the toys too. But it was basically like the 90s side-scroller Mortal Kombat, but with monsters. And it was a fun game, and it's one that I always thought, like, why don't they make a movie out of this? Like, it would be easy and awesome. Just a world where giant monsters are fighting everywhere and primitive humans are caught in between. But, hasn't happened yet.
Godzilla's emergence from ice may be an homage to his introduction in King Kong vs. Godzilla in 1962. And we'll get into that, but that is a scene I love. I love the breakout of the ice scene in the 62 version and in this one.
Yeah, I think it's definitely an homage to that. I don't think there's any secrets or any bones about that. And it's a fun little fact that in both movies, when Godzilla emerges from the ice, he looks distinctly different than when he went into the ice. Even in King Kong versus Godzilla, it's the previous movie. But Godzilla, whenever he needs to evolve, he does.
Absolutely. Taking care of business. The image used for the blueprint for the Beast Glove is the arm of the Pacific Rim Jaeger Gypsy Danger. I thought that was kind of cool. A little connection between the two films that most people will catch on to.
That's nice. That's nice. Yeah, I understand that at one point, if the Pacific Rim franchise had continued to thrive with theatrical films, that they were going to do the whole interdimensional portal thing, and that was going to be the way that they would have the Pacific Rim universe crossover with the Monsterverse, but such ambitions did not play out. You could just imagine a world where like Jet Jaguar done in the sort of style of a Pacific Rim Jaeger. That would be really cool.
Gosh, I hope we get Jet Jaguar and Megalon and them in the Monsterverse. Keep these films going for years to come.
Yeah, no, it's like, look, I understand that every single monster has to be licensed from Toho and that they all cost money, and so there's pressure to do more original monsters and to only really pick out the big necessary ones. But oh man, like you just love any reality where you could see these characters brought to life in the modern age with modern visual effects, and I mean, Toho's doing those sort of yearly shorts where they go back to Suitmation, and they did like one with Hedorah, then one with Gigan, and then the most recent one was Godzilla fighting Jet Jaguar. And even with going back to Suitmation, it was incredible to see Jet Jaguar again. So maybe there's other realms and areas where some of these characters can be brought back.
Absolutely. We can only hope. Fingers crossed.
Indeed.
Episode titles of Hayes' Titan Truth podcast make reference to Planet X, Monster Island, and then Madison Russell was also shown to have been a recent guest on the show, sharing her Mothra twin moon base theory. So I thought that was a fun little nod as well.
Yeah, that's cool. Every time I watch the movie, I see more of those, and that stuff is just always great. That's always fun to thread in the obvious continuity stuff, and then the sort of minor level continuity and little Easter eggs for fans. I like it.
So I read the Godzilla vs Kong, the novelization. So this is a little. Anyone who read that, this is probably a little bit for them. And it's the Iwi writings referred to Godzilla as the monster that ate a star, echoing a claim Gia previously made about him in the Godzilla vs Kong novelization when recounting an Iwi story she heard. In the previous telling, however, Scar King and Shimu were not referenced, and Godzilla forced the ape army that opposed him to withdraw to Skull Island instead of sealing them within the Hollow Earth.
Nice. And I believe because I do read the tie-in comics for the Monsterverse. So you read the novels, I read the tie-in comics for the Monsterverse, and I think some of them have made references like that to Godzilla as well, the monster who ate a star. So they definitely they aren't really crazy about doing the sort of MCU level of big world building and big lore and big setups for the future and stuff, but they do thread that stuff in the ancillary materials for the eagle-eyed fans, and I do appreciate that.
Absolutely. It's always fun to continue the continuity, to keep it true to the films, the books, the comics. And I mean, it's nice that they even have done comics in between, like little stories in between movies, like connecting like from the 14 Godzilla to King of the Monsters, like why Godzilla's spines looked different or dorsal plates looked different from the two films and stuff like that. So those are fun little nods.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, I got two more here for you, and one is Bernie Hayes complains about a troll account that frequently interacts with him called Ghidorah Stan 64, with the number referencing the year of the monster's film debut in Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster.
Yeah, and there's a big popular fan theory that the person behind Ghidorah Stan 64 is actually Madison's friend Josh from Godzilla vs Kong, because he didn't really get along with Bernie that much. So there's like this fan theory that I'm like I love that. I don't know why, but I totally love the idea of that. And although why he would call himself Ghidorah Stan, that's pretty rough. I like the little bit of trivia, and I don't know if you have this in your trivia, but the scene where Godzilla gets out of the Coliseum and we see the Godzilla graffiti on one of the walls, and Godzilla stomps, and the ground and floor breaks up in a particular kind of way, was actually intentionally visualized in a way that mimics the way that a similar shot was done in Godzilla -1. The director saw a shot in the Godzilla -1 trailer where Godzilla stamps, and the ground perforates and bursts up in this particular way near the camera. And so he had them recreate that for that shot in Godzilla Kong.
I did not have that on here, but that I always love hearing from you. So, and I always love learning stuff. So that's a nice little nod too.
Yeah, if you watch the Godzilla Ginza sequence, it's when he's sort of stomping in the streets, and you see it's like this kind of close up shot of the foot going in, and then the foreground kind of breaks up in this specific way, and then it's done almost exactly the same way here in the shot where Godzilla gets out of the Coliseum. You see his foot crush the graffiti. It's done almost exactly the same way, and it was intentional from the director because he liked the way it looked in the trailer for -1. I was like, that's awesome.
Absolutely. I like that. I like that. I'll have to, as the next time I watch it, I'll pay attention and see if I can catch her. I'm sure I can. My last one for you is this film marks the second time that Godzilla has been shown feeding on the radiation from a nuclear power plant in a film following 1984's The Return of Godzilla. So that is a great scene as well. I'm sure we'll get into scenes, but there's a lot of fun in this.
Yeah, I loved the way that it was actually visualized too. You actually see him sort of literally feeding it through his mouth and absorbing it, and it's very cool. There's a few moments there's at least one or two key moments in some of the Gamera movies. Gamera, famously kind of the second banana Godzilla in Japan. He's a giant turtle, but he feeds on fire essentially, and there's a few moments in the Gamera movies where they do the kind of sucking the fire up into his mouth thing, and it's sort of it kind of has the same kind of energy as this shot of Godzilla absorbing the nuclear energy into his mouth. So it was nice to see as a monster fan.
Absolutely. That, like I said, we'll get into some scenes here soon, but first, Chris, why don't you go ahead and give me who your favorite character was of this film?
Oh, that's an easy one. It's Trapper, as portrayed by Dan Stevens. Just way too fun and entertaining of a character. Dan Stevens, we say this about people all the time in certain movies where they say they knew what kind of movie they were making, or they know what kind of movie they're in. And Dan Stevens knew exactly the kind of wild sci-fi fantasy adventure kind of a tone, and he embraces the fun of this movie, and so Trapper is just a standout character in the film. So definitely my favorite.
I liked Trapper. I like that they brought back Dr. Andrews, of course. I like a lot of the characters in this film, but I went back with my Godzilla vs. Kong, and I chose Gia. I loved how she has grown up. I love that how they have to use her as a connection to Mothra and like the Hollow Earth Iwi people that are still living there, kind of hidden. And I loved just her usage and her connection to this film. And still, of course, with Kong. And I mean, even Godzilla kind of like, as she's standing on Mothra's head, kind of like looks at her and like almost like gives her a little nod of approval. And you got approval, and you're pretty much now a friend of the two greatest monsters in cinematic history. Like, you're awesome.
Yeah, she kind of gets to be the sort of solo Mothra fairy in this movie a little bit. It's very interesting that Gia gets to be, in the same way that the Iwis get to both be the Skull Island natives, as well as the sort of the Mothra worshipping Infant Island natives in the form of being in the Hollow Earth. They kind of double for both of those. Gia gets to be the sort of King Kong muse that is always in one of these movies, as well as being a bit of a Mothra fairy, in her sense, and so she's got these connections to these giant beasts, and I think it's really cool. Again, I'm a total sucker for whenever these movies the new versions sort of reinterpret and respin an old concept or a classic concept into a new way, and kind of like reimagine it, and so I love to see that. It's a way to make it all feel connected, and it echoes each other. without just regurgitating the exact same thing.
Absolutely. Like I said, she is my, probably besides Sarazawa, she is probably my Monsterverse favorite so far, and hopefully they continue with her into the next film. But only time will tell, and we will see, I guess.
Yeah, she's getting there. She's getting there for sure.
I'll give you my favorite score of the film, and I listened to it a couple times. There was a couple that I went back and forth with, but all in all, I chose one that was called New Entrances and Encounters, and that sounded like this. I know this. I'm not the biggest fan of the soundtrack. I think they did a very good job with the soundtrack, like how it, like in the scenes it encompasses and stuff like that. I wasn't the biggest fan of the Godzilla vs Kong soundtrack. You know, I liked that as well. For the Monsterverse, the soundtracks have been kind of hit or miss for me, but for what this film brought and the scenes that the composer was like encompassing and like putting the music to, like, it does its job for this film for sure.
Yeah, I see, and I am a big fan of the Godzilla versus Kong score, but I thought this one was a little bit of a step down, a little more generic, a little more kind of basic, or just kind of there in some places. I like the way that they managed to somehow give Mothra a theme that stood out as a Mothra theme without being the vintage Mothra theme. You know, because that's all has to be, you know, just like Godzilla's classic theme. That all has to be licensed bit by bit by bit. Every song you license, you have to pay Toho their dues. You know, it's not like, oh, we pay this money and then we get all the music. You know, it's like, no, each track. So I understand why they had to do certain things a certain way. My favorite track, I would have to go with Collapsing Gravity, which is basically the music that goes along with the big final battle in the Hollow Earth when the gravity wave hits and all the monsters are doing their thing down there. It's just too cool of a scene, and it's kind of that standout big epic track. So that's my favorite piece from the score.
That is a good one as well. I do like that one. Like I said, I can put this soundtrack on in the background and just kind of jam to some background noise and stuff like that. It isn't a terrible soundtrack at all, but in the Monsterverse, I think it is a step down for sure from Godzilla King of the Monsters, and a step down also from Godzilla vs Kong. So we'll see what the next one has in store for us when it comes to the music.
I hope they bring back Bear McCreary, hashtag bring back Bear, and I hope they cut the check so that we can get some more of the Godzilla themes, some more of the classics. That would be great.
I couldn't agree with you more on that. Chris, what was your favorite quote or most memorable line from Godzilla X Kong?
So there's not a whole lot of epic line deliveries in this movie, or insane kind of high stakes awesome lines, but I do like an exchange where you know, Eileen Andrews is talking to Trapper, and she says, you go and become the weirdest vet in the world. And he says, yeah, it's basically me and Dr. Doolittle, except my animals are bigger. I don't know. That just kind of sets the tone for exactly what kind of character Trapper is. And it's a good joke. And while he also has like Dr. Doolittle energy, there's something about him that always gives me like, I could see Dan Stevens playing a version of Willy Wonka. Like he has that kind of Gene Wilder kind of energy to him. I could see that, but that's besides the point. That's just a fun joke. I like it. He's a guy going around. He gives Kong a new tooth and things like that. I just dig it. He's like the crocodile hunter of the Monsterverse.
Absolutely. And for mine, I chose, it was just a small interaction, but most of this is Dr. Eileen Andrews. And she says, this whole room is covered in Iwi's script. It says that in the beginning, Hollow Earth lived in harmony with the surface world. The Titans were the guardians of nature, and the great apes became the protectors of humanity. But a great evil threatened the peace. A powerful and ruthless ape, desperate to conquer the surface world, led his tribe into war against the monster who ate a star. Trapper goes, Godzilla. Eileen Andrews goes, there's more. The war with the apes nearly destroyed Godzilla, but after a great battle, he imprisoned the apes in a fiery realm of Hollow Earth. Their false king remains obsessed with reaching the surface. The Iwi call him the Scar King. And I was just like, and then that's when they transitioned to Kong kind of like getting to like the apes and like the Hollow Earth where Scar King is, and it's just a great like lead up scene and stuff like that. It was almost like giving you chills, like raising the hair on the back of your neck.
Yeah, it sets the stage well. There's something in movies when characters are sort of talked about and referred to before they show up. It kind of just like builds the sort of allure and sort of mystique around them, and so it sets the stage well for Scar King's appearance.
Absolutely. I know that was a long one, but I called it the Hollow Earth backstory, I guess you could say. That was my favorite kind of quote or lines in the film, and it's just it set up the next scenes perfectly. That was one of my favorite parts of the film.
Yeah, it's the goofy exposition scene where she's looking at the scriptures and she gets a whole monologue of information out of it. It reminds me of the scene from the original Alien versus Predator, where the guy sees some hieroglyphics on the wall, and then he starts to talk, and it goes into this whole extended flashback of all of the things that the Predators and aliens did in the past. It's like it's so fun when the characters could extrapolate so much from so little.
Absolutely, I love it. It gives me a laugh. It gives me a smile. I love scenes like that. Give me some backstory and give me why are these characters here? Why are these monsters here? Like, give me a little bit about it. I love it.
Yeah, break out the lore.
Absolutely. What was your favorite scene from the new Empire?
I have to go with the scene that pairs with the song I use, which is the low gravity fight. We get an opportunity to see Godzilla sort of swimming in a sense, or flying in a sense, in the low gravity of the Hollow Earth, which is very very much a tribute to when he flew in Godzilla versus Hedorah using the power of his breath. I would have loved to see Godzilla use his breath to propel himself in the Hollow Earth, to kind of get a visual that was just like Godzilla versus Hedorah, but that's okay. And I mean, it's just the definition of monster mash. You see all four monsters, Scar King, Shimu, Godzilla, Kong, flying through the air at each other. You get you cut between the close up of all four monsters, and then it's just this absolute, brawl down there with the other apes and Tsuko, and they're all bouncing and jumping around in the zero gravity, and Mothra's in there webbing up some of the apes. That is just the sort of bonkers monster action that you pay for. So that's my favorite sequence in the movie.
Absolutely. I know. I feel like you have a couple runner-ups to talk about, because I do as well. But I chose the the Kong versus Scar King, and like the Godzilla and Kong team up. I struggled between them two, but the Kong versus Scar King was just when he kind of like isn't introduced yet, but the one ape drops the rock and another ape kind of like pushes him, punches him to the ground, and Kong like helps him up, and you get this another ape getting in Kong's face and kind of like almost you could say bitching him out, I guess. And you just know it's not going to end well for him, and he punches him, and it's kind of comedic because his like tongue's hanging out of his mouth as he's knocked out and stuff, and Kong like pounds his chest like pretty much telling him like I'm not the one here, like I'm not the one to play with. And they eventually introduce Scar King, and everyone's bowing, and Kong is still standing tall, and he kind of just looks at Scar King like unimpressed. And I just love the facial expressions of Kong in that film, how unimpressed he is with Scar King, and how much more massive he looks. Like he's just a thicker, like more muscular build, and Scar King's this little like orangutan arm type of guy. And the fight scene is great as well, and it introduces Shimu, and that was probably my favorite scene of the film.
Yeah, that's a great sequence, all without dialogue, all without humans. You go from Kong coming in, interacting with the other apes, meeting Scar King, fighting him, and then Shimu's introduction. That's Shimu gets introduced. People posted screen grabs that Shimu is very sort of evocative of like a classic kind of Ray Harryhausen type of stop motion creature, of like the giant creature being led out of the dungeon or the cave with the big chains holding it back. That's a very sort of vintage American monster movie type of aesthetic as opposed to a pure Japanese kaiju thing. And so I love everything about that sequence as well. And that's really the heart of the movie in terms of what it's going for, which is the monsters are the stars, the monsters are the main characters. You don't need dialogue to tell a story. It's really good stuff, and I like it. And that's a that might not be a level of art in the way that Godzilla -1 is art, but it's certainly an artistic ability to be able to express a story that way.
Absolutely. And I know there was another one I wanted to give a quick shout out to. You brought up the monster mashup, in the zero gravity, and even when they get back to the surface world, that's a great 2-on-2 as well. But I wanted to talk about the solo fight we get with Godzilla and Kong, where Mothra shows up, after Godzilla suplexes Kong, and Kong gives Godzilla a haymaker and knocks him out for a second with the beast glove. And it's when Godzilla has Kong down again, kind of stepping on his chest again, like, all right, buddy, I warned you, like, this is it for you. And Mothra comes and hits Godzilla, and Godzilla kind of gets like face to face with Gia and Mothra, and you have Godzilla, Mothra in the middle, and then Kong like all like roaring to the sky, and like Mothra spreading her wings out. Like that to me is like an iconic, like chilling scene as we get those three classic monsters all together on the scene in the big screen or on the screen together. Like I thought that was phenomenal.
Yeah, it's absolutely epic. I like that Godzilla and Kong get to have a little bit of a rematch. I like that it's under different circumstances. That they say that Kong sort of has grown in strength and prowess and power since being in the Hollow Earth, and then he gets boosted up with the glove, and Godzilla's obviously gotten his sort of energy power up, so he's able to have a stronger breath and a higher body temperature and all of that stuff. And I like that Kong calls him out. And like when you really look at how far the pyramids are from the Rock of Gibraltar where Godzilla is, it's like the most epic call out ever. It'd be like yelling in your driveway at the guy like across the neighborhood or maybe across the town to like come and fight you, but they go after it. And I like that despite the back and forth, it ends the same way with Godzilla's foot on Kong's chest. So, the fanboy in me liked that.
Absolutely. And again, if it wasn't for Mothra, Kong would be a goner.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All right, that's all I got for you there. I mean, there's plenty of great fun in this film, but how about we get into some monster design?
Yes, yes.
How about we start with Kong, since he was kind of the basic, he got the one upgrade with the beast glove. I like that, but for the most part he still remained the same from the previous couple films.
Yeah, yeah, I dig it. The glove is a nice accessory. We're slowly getting to like cyberpunk Kong. He gets the metal tooth, he gets the beast glove. It's like, dude, where are they gonna go with this guy down the road? How many more enhancements and weapons and things is he gonna have? But it's a cool trend. If I compared Godzilla earlier to Doom Guy from the Doom video games, and if Godzilla is Doom Guy, then Kong's definitely becoming like Kratos or something like that from God of War.
Absolutely. I'll go into some other ones quick. I know the original the Godzilla design is from the 2019 film, and then the Godzilla vs Kong film, so that stays the same. We will get into his upgraded design here in a little bit. But what did you think of Mothra back in this film?
Yeah, I thought it was a great look. It was pleasant to see Mothra. I still love her sound design so much. Like her little screeches are just like perfect. And a surprisingly large role. Like you could argue that the smaller role she has in this movie kind of almost uses her in a bit more of an effective way than how she was used in King of the Monsters. She gets some standout moments in the final battle. Really contributing, and it was just nice to see. But yeah, she still looks great.
Absolutely. I always love to see Mothra. I mean, she is always welcome in any Godzilla movie that we have, especially the
Mhm.
Monsterverse, because they have done her design justice. They are 2 for 2 now for Mothra with me.
Yeah, and I mean, and she's got to die again now that she's back. So maybe the next movie. So who's gonna be the one that gets to blow up Mothra this time?
Maybe they bring back Batra and they get into a duel,
Yeah.
something crazy.
Yep. Yep.
Um, we could go into Suko, Scar King, and then the other apes. I liked Suko. The green eyes for it kind of threw me for a loop. I liked that, just kind of like a mini Kong, they say in the movie. And then Scar King, I just liked how long his arms were. Like I said, like almost like orangutan arms. His eyes were kind of almost like he'd been in Hollow Earth so long that he was partially blind or something like that to me. Like I like the
Yeah.
design, another basic ape design, but I do like Scar King. But for me, it was from what the trailers gave us, I thought he was going to be a way more menacing villain.
Yeah, I thought he was gonna have. I thought the kind of like blue energy in his eyes kind of made me get a sense of like, oh, does he have like in the way that Godzilla's got blue energy and the axe is charged with like blue energy? I was like, oh, is he gonna have like some kind of weird energy power about him or something, or some kind of powered up ability? But yeah, he's much more of a sort of conniving, nefarious villain as opposed to a an insanely imposing, powerful one, which I guess is interesting. They can't all be sort of doomsday villains like King Ghidorah. They can't all be that. They have to be interesting and different in their own ways. And what Scar King brings to the table is that he's leading an army of other great apes, and he has Shimo as a sort of steed and secret weapon. So it's a different kind of villain, but I did like him a lot for that. His design's cool. Suko's got an interesting design. People have pointed out that his size is almost equivalent to what Kong's size was in Skull Island, for relativity. And it's wild, it's wild to think about that, but it's cool.
What did you think of the Drowned Viper?
I thought it was cool. I thought it was really awesome. Uh, it's huge, like, it's long. When you see how big it is relative to Kong, you get a grasp of just how damn long that thing is, and but yeah, it's a great new creature. I like the big snaky creatures. Tiamat's also awesome. You know, they always give me, they always just make me think of a vintage Toho kaiju like Manda and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, the drowned viper had to be 1,000 foot long or longer. If Kong is 300 feet tall or 330 feet tall, whatever he is in this film, then it had to be 1,000, 1,500 foot long or longer. And it's like, if that comes to the surface world, that is enormous. You know, down there in Hollow Earth, it just looks average size to a lot of the things down there. But if that comes up here, that is the largest Titan that Monarch or anyone has ever seen.
Yeah, and there's a great shot where Kong and Zuko cross over a skeleton that is of an insane scale that it makes them look tiny in comparison. So something tells me that we're gonna get some like maybe the next movie will unleash a very insanely huge scaled monster for them to battle. Could you imagine something that is alive that Godzilla and Kong have to fight that makes them look almost human sized? You know, it's hard to fathom.
Yeah, we're calling everybody. Mothra, Shimu. We're calling Godzilla and Kong. We need it. We need a 4-against-1 monster mash.
Yeah, no kidding.
All right. Speaking of Shimu, what did you think of Shimu?
I think Shimo had a great. I don't know. I loved it. Kind of dragon like, kind of iguana like. Sort of ice creature, and I the design of the scales. Like you could just feel that kind of like iguana style texture of those scales. That sort of like crocodile texture of her scales, and I loved it. Like I said, she was very much like a throwback to like a Ray Harryhausen stop motion creature or something to that effect, and a cool ice power ability. I really liked that monster. Very good design.
Yeah, when it came to Shimo, I liked her as well. The only complaint I had is that in certain parts it looked a little bit too CGI for me.
Okay.
But other than that, I liked it. I loved the ice breath, or like the crystal breath that she had. I liked that when she walked, like she would continue and like the ground would freeze under her and stuff like that. There was also a great scene that I liked in the final battle when they came back to the surface world, and Shimo was running towards Kong, and Godzilla just comes out of nowhere like a linebacker trying to save a touchdown, at the 1 yard line,
Mhm.
and just pummels her and crunches her and tackles her to the ground. I absolutely loved that. That was a
Yeah,
great scene.
yeah, definitely a clutch moment for sure. I like the interaction where after where when Kong's got Scar King and the crystal's been destroyed, she seems kind of unsure. She takes a look at Godzilla and he roars at her, and she immediately blasts and frees Scar King like it's like, no, listen here, bitch, you're gonna do exactly what I tell you to do now. Like I don't know, I loved it.
Yeah, absolutely. Just another Titan kind of like,
You got a new alpha.
yeah, like another Titan bowing down to Godzilla, and then another great ending to the film as well. Kong riding her back to Hollow Earth with the other apes and what will now be, I'm sure, his family and friends, but
Hmm.
like kind of
All perfectly set up to be brutally murdered in the next movie.
not good, not good. I'm crossing my fingers.
Uh-huh. I mean, we will see. I mean, gosh, could you imagine Godzilla and Kong leading like an army of great apes and other titans into some epic battle? That, like, dude, it's going like it could get wild. It could get so wild.
We could definitely get some classic Showa era cheese here coming up soon.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any dude Kong riding like leading an army of monsters into battle. I don't think there's anything cheesy about that. That's freaking iconic. I'm sorry. That's like Lord of the Rings stuff. There ain't nothing cheesy about that. As long as you do it right, as long as you execute it right. I thought monsters bowing to Godzilla would be dumb and cheesy, and then the way they did it in the movie was really, really cool. So it's all about how you do it.
Absolutely, I'll agree with you there. It can definitely be done in a great way. That's fun for the fans and enjoyable to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. We didn't really go into Godzilla's new design, but it's epic. I like the magenta. Yeah, yeah. It's a good. I like the leaner look. I like the magenta look. I like the leaner look. it feels very sort of Godzilla 2000 meets Godzilla Final Wars, and so I love everything about Godzilla's upgraded design.
I like his tail. The difference in the ending to his tail, and like how he's got like the almost like the sharp spikes that are coming out of his elbows. Yeah, I love the pink on him, the magenta. It looks phenomenal when he comes out, and he's
And
just. We'll see what else they can come up with for him to evolve in. But this, from the blue like to the pink, like the what did you call it? The bioluminescence.
bioluminescence, yeah.
It's phenomenal what they keep doing with him and like
And
to
I
evolve
think
him.
Yeah, and I think it sets a stage to kind of keep going. Like maybe that pink darkens up into more of a red, more of a crimson. Give us more of that sort of burning Godzilla, fire Godzilla energy. Who knows? Maybe it goes kind of white and pure. Like a sort of new power. Like who knows? But I loved it. I liked seeing the sort of his eyes glowing in a way where his eyes were almost flaming with energy. I just it's a great look. I love it.
Absolutely. From what I've heard is that this power, like or read that this power up or evolved state that Godzilla has in this film is only temporary. That he'll go back to the way he looked in 2019 and 2021, the Godzilla vs Kong. But I kind of hope he keeps this. I
I mean,
like to
I
see
could
where it
do,
goes.
if they want to calm down the colors a little bit and maybe some of the more crystalline look to the spikes and stuff. Like I'm okay with that sort of kind of regressing, but I do the new body proportions. I am a fan of. I like the leaner body proportions, so I hope they don't just go back to him being all chunky. So we'll see.
Kind of take it back to like Godzilla against Mechagodzilla or Tokyo SOS spike or dorsal plate look.
Yeah, something like that. But I mean, yeah, I mean, you're talking to someone who champions the Final Wars lean look. So I mean, I'm always up for something that kind of feels like that.
Absolutely, I love that he was lean and mean in this, and it was great. If you want to keep it this way, I love it. I've loved pretty much every incarnation of Godzilla we've gotten in the Monsterverse, so that they've all been great and they've upgraded and evolved well. So let's keep it going.
Indeed. Moving along to the MonsterVerse rankings, it's tough, because it's a new movie. I love so much about it. So it always has subject to kind of rise or lower a little bit over time. But if I had to pick the MonsterVerse rankings of the 5 movies now, I think I would put Kong Skull Island in the number 5 spot. Just above it, Godzilla 2014. And then I think I'd have Godzilla Kong in the the new Empire in the number 3 spot. King of the Monsters is kind of too perfect of a Godzilla movie for me to not rate it higher. It just checks too many of the boxes. And then I still got GVK. Godzilla versus Kong is still my favorite just because it was such an iconic matchup and it did so many things right, and it's still that kind of just like perfect kind of wish fulfillment kind of movie. So that's still my top one, and GXK in the middle here.
All right, so with the 5 we have so far, I have Godzilla 2014 at the bottom, Kong Skull Island in the 4 spot. I have Godzilla and Kong: The New Empire in the 3 spot, just as you do. But I have Godzilla vs. Kong number 2, and then Godzilla King of the Monsters in my number 1 spot for the Monsterverse.
Yeah, can't criticize that too much. That's totally valid.
Absolutely. But this does not have a released follow-up film yet. So on our next episode, we will be concluding the Godzilla franchise with something that I have been tormenting Chris with since we started this podcast, and we are going to rank all 38 Godzilla films from 38 to number 1. And
yeah, like absolute psychos, we're gonna rank all of them. I privately advocated for like, hey, can we just keep all the different series separately so we could have like the Showa rankings and the Heisei rankings and the Millennium rankings? And he's like, no, we're gonna put them all together and rank them top to bottom. So that's gonna be an epic undertaking for sure.
I can't let you have it easy. I gotta give you something hard to think about for a while. So gotta rattle your brain.
So I'm gonna do my research. I'm gonna find all the ones you've been ranking high, and they're all gonna be in my bottom 10.
I have nothing. I'm silent. I'm hurt.
Invasion of Astro Monster, worst Godzilla movie ever.
I don't know. You hate time travel though.
I do hate time travel. I do hate time travel.
We will. It'll definitely be a fun discussion because I think some of these films that when ranking them among their own eras, me and you don't really differ on them very much. We've been pretty much we've agreed pretty well on all of these, ranking them in the specific eras. But then when you talk about ranking like Godzilla versus King Ghidorah or Godzilla versus Destroya against Godzilla versus the original Mecha Godzilla, like how do you place those? Where do you go? So like it'll definitely be a fun conversation to have.
Yeah, it comes down to preference, and you don't want to be too reverent and nostalgic for the vintage stuff, but you don't want to be too biased towards the stuff that you saw when you were a kid and it kind of stuck in your memories. And you don't want to be too biased towards the new stuff just because it's new. So it's definitely going to be a challenging endeavor, but we will see how it goes.
Absolutely. So we will get into that next week. We will have the countdown of all countdowns for all 38 films. So, Chris, as we wrap up the Godzilla franchise next week, so thank you for joining me on all of these. These were fun. We'll continue on with our next franchise after these, but as always, thanks for joining me.
Yeah, always happy to be here. It's been an epic journey for sure.
All right, so we have our Godzilla ranking of all 38 films on our next episode. So again, thanks Chris for joining me. Thanks anyone who's listening, and until next time.